Ray Dalio is the founder of the world's largest hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates. The firm employs a unique management process, and as you may have heard, Ray is out with a new book about it. Ray, welcome.
Thank you.
So, talk about your management practices. Do they really make a difference, and how do you know they make a difference? How do you measure that?
Well, I'll take the first question first. In order to be successful in the markets, you have to have independent thinking because the consensus is built into the price. So I've got to have a bunch of independent thinkers, right? And we better get at what's true. So that idea of radical truthfulness and radical transparencies and having procedures to get by them, being idea meritocratic, is fantastic. Let me just explain how it works, right? Only three things you need to do to have an idea meritocracy. First, you have to have everybody put on the table their honest thoughts. It's not easy to do, but in our culture, that's an important thing. Second, you need to have thoughtful disagreement. You have to know how you can bang it around and get at better answers than any individual has. And then third, you have to have ways of getting past that, protocols, then that are idea meritocratic ways. So the answer to the question is we wouldn't be half as successful, or we wouldn't maybe even be successful at all, because nobody in their mind has all the right answers. I mean, the markets teach you humility. So you need idea meritocratic decision making to get the best ideas to raise your probabilities of being right. At least that's what's worked for us.
But at the end of the day, though, Ray, I mean, aren't you looking for the best people and you promote them, and the worst people, they get shown the door? And isn't that just the same as any other company?
No. I mean, how do you know who the best people are? So there's the selection. And then second, how are those people going to deal with each other? Okay, so let's say you get the best people and you're still going to have to deal with how they're dealing with each other. Can they deal in an idea meritocratic way? How do you get to the best answer? Same question. Or like, think about it. Are you going to have autocratic decision making, like the boss knows the right answer and he's going to tell you? Or are you going to have democratic decision making, which is one man, one vote? This whole idea of believability decision making is important. And then in addition to that, what was key is write down the principles. Okay, write down the principles and then convert those to algorithms. Like, this has been a big deal for us. So look, the same things happen over and over again, every time, right? So what's decision making? What am I going to do if I'm in that set of circumstances? Okay, you got to write it down. There's a power to writing it down. If you write it down, then you can agree on what the best ones are, and then you can convert those to algorithms. We convert those to algorithms, and they become the decision rules that think better than us. So it's been fantastic.
But this process is somewhat controversial, Ray, and is it worth it? I mean, you've opened yourself up to criticism. People have written negative things about this process. Is it really worth it?
Yeah, it's not for everybody, okay? It's not the real question is, can you get past your egos and your blind spots? Can you, in an idea meritocratic way, find out what your weaknesses and your strengths are? I mean, that's the defining difference, right? Is it worth it? I look back on 42 years of doing this, and and I'm at this stage of my life. I've had not just the success of the business, but I've had the best possible relationships, right? Let me give you one sentence that characterizes what we're doing. That's why explaining it in the book is important. We have an idea meritocracy in which the goals are two, to have meaningful work and meaningful relationships, or to be great at work and to have great relationships, because they support each other. It's tough love. You can have tough love. So have an idea meritocracy with the goals being meaningful work and meaningful relationships through radical truthfulness and radical transparency. In other words, put what you think on the table and let everybody see, and have that meritocracy. It attracts people because it makes everybody a part of that decision. In other words, if I'm not going to be able to tell you what I think, and you're not going to be able to tell you what you think, and we're not going to be able to work that through, what kind of relationship are we going to have? Just the boss telling everybody? You can't make people part of the organization. They can't be essentially owners in the outcome if they don't feel like they can make sense of things and be part of that. So that's been the magic. I know I can't describe it briefly to you here, but that's why I tried to explain it. So I think the real question for organizations, other organizations, and this is not by any means a investment business thing. This is far broader than investment business thing. Would you like to have an idea meritocracy? Would you like to have the best ideas win out? If you want to do that, and that is your goal, then the question is only how. And that's why I try to explain it clearly in the book.
All right, shifting gears a little bit. As a student of management practices, how do you assess Donald Trump as a manager?
I'm not going to make an assessment of Donald Trump as a manager. I don't see him up close. I don't know what he's like. I haven't had that type of interaction. Can't comment. Not knowledgeable enough. I would say what's important here is the processes that I'm describing, which is to say what's important is, first of all, to make his principles clear, and then to walk the talk, and then to have thoughtful disagreement, to know that what is in his head may be right or may be wrong, and to be able to gather others around him and to have that thoughtful disagreement so that he can get at the best answer. And ideally, also know for the country, as a leader of the country, what are the principles that bind us together, and how can we get past our disagreements so that we together are rowing in the right direction to be making the best possible decisions. Those are important things for any leader. I don't know. I'm not in the middle of the conversations with the people around him. I don't know how that works. But I would say that that would be the best advice I can give, and those would be, the relevant thoughts.
And that would apply to the White House, is what you're saying.
It applies
to any entity.
Right. It applies to any relationship.
Yeah.
If you get past the notion that you might not have the right answer in your head, and your goal is only to have the right answer, that's the key. You only have to do two things in order to be successful. You have to know what the right decisions to make are, and you have to have the courage to make them. And when you're making, to know what the right decisions are, you got to know that they're not necessarily the ones that you're stuck in your head with your opinions, right?
Right.
So you've got to go beyond your opinions. So I think it's one of the greatest tragedies of mankind, that individuals hold on to their opinions and don't put them out and stress test them. So put them out there, stress test them, and get them from others so that you can raise your probabilities of being right. That's how we've raised our probabilities of being right.
I mean, the book is really wide-ranging. You talk about science, finance, psychology. What's your favorite discipline? What's your favorite part of the book?
I don't know. I got interested in neuroscience because of how brains are working. I got interested in history because everything repeats over time. Let's say one of the greatest reasons that people are surprised, and I've been surprised, is because things that never happened in our lifetime but happened repeatedly surprise us. So I've gotten interested in history. I can't say the parts of the book. I'd say the most valuable part of the book is this section about radical open-mindedness and how to do that well.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a kind of personal question here.
Okay.
And that is, do you believe in God? Are you an atheist, agnostic, and what is the driving principle in your life?
So I think it depends on what God is, right? I don't know if God is the forces of nature and so on. I definitely believe in those forces of nature and so on. If it is man and some reincarnation and no one, I would say I would probably doubt that. But that's a bigger question that I know. I believe in these forces of nature and evolution, and I think that that's like the most beautiful thing you read in the book. I think that nature is such a great teacher for me because it shows how reality works, and so when I look at it. Man is only one of 10 million species, right? Man is 200,000 years old. Earth is 3.9 billion years old. Every species evolves or breaks into another species. So seeing these things and realizing that I'm part of that and that everything works like a machine. reality works like a machine, and just embracing it and learning how to deal with it in a realistic way has been thrilling to me as well as helpful.
All right, let's talk about something somewhat related, artificial intelligence.
Yeah?
You wrote, I suspect that AI will lead to incredibly fast and remarkable advances, but I also fear it could lead to our demise. In our lifetime? Can you elaborate?
The beautiful thing about it that we've enjoyed is the capacity of the computer to do things much better than we can, right? So the thinking. The way we do it is we specify our criteria, we test those criteria, we see how they would have worked over a period of time, and so on. The real question is how you come up with the algorithm. Is that algorithm just by testing the past? And most importantly, do you understand the logic behind that algorithm? Is there deep understanding as well as the algorithm? Or do you believe the algorithm? And if you have deep understanding, or if the future is going to be the same as the past, I think it's really great. But if the future is different from the past, and you don't have the deep understanding to know the difference, that your decision is going to make sense, I think that's very dangerous. I think in a competitive environment, there's going to be a lot of desire to throw a lot of information into computers and derive algorithms that are not understood and may not work well, will not work well, if the future is different from the past. So I think it's a tremendous asset, but it also could be a threat to our existence.
Yeah, I'm inferring that the future is not necessarily going to be the same as the past.
Right. Well, in some ways, some things it is, and some things it isn't.
Yes, because you said history repeats, right?
Yeah. If I'm doing something where the sample, playing chess, let's say, if I take enough data and put it into the computer and it comes up with the algorithms, because I know that that data set is large enough and has enough observations, I could be comfortable with that. If I'm having a doctor do surgeries, let's say, and I have a bunch of doctors do surgeries, those same movements and everything can be mimicked, essentially. That could be converted to data. And you can have robots essentially do those surgeries and be comfortable that the robots will do the surgeries even if you may not understand the algorithm, because that surgery, that mix of conditions is going to remain largely the same. However, when something is different in the future, that it hasn't been a case that has happened in the future, and particularly, I've seen it in markets. We've used algorithms for almost our entire existence, and I've seen most firms that have used algorithms or what's called artificial intelligence blow up, because the future is not the same as the past. So I'm personally, I need to have deep understanding. I mean, my own approach to this is that if I can't describe why it makes sense, and write down these principles, and you look at them and say, okay, that makes sense, it's very difficult for me to have faith, because I have a big fear of that being wrong. I'm not saying it's a problem in those things that could be mimicked like that, so I believe the chess game. But the way I like to play the game is I like to have the computer chess game, my version of it, operate together with me, okay? That's how it works. The systems make decisions that are our criteria, and then I'm making the decisions next to it, so I'm still thinking. And then when they're at odds, at the reconciliation, I found that to be very effective. I do believe it'll be very effective. I think that we're entering a world where that's what you're going to experience, that you're going to go to principles when you encounter them, and you're going to say, I have another one of those situations, and what should I do? And increasingly, you will have assistance that is very similar to a GPS, that will be giving you instructions, and you could think it simultaneously, and that's what the world will be like, I think.
Right. In writing about why you wrote the book, you addressed those inside Bridgewater with, I have done my best to bring you to this point. Now is the time for you to step up and for me to fade away. How serious are you on this fade away part, and what does the future hold in store for you?
Well, first of all, I love the game, and I'll always play the game of the markets as long as I'm welcome to. But I'm at a stage in my life that the greatest thing is to have not anybody need me, right? I think there are 3 stages in life. There's how I approach it. First stage in life, you're dependent on others and you're learning. Second stage in life, you're working and others are dependent on you and you want to be successful. As you go into the third stage in life, where you want others to be successful without you, that's the stage. That's where I am. That's what 2017 represents to me. That's why I wrote that book. That book is to pass along to people those essentially recipes for handling different situations that I could pass along to be of help for others. Because my greatest enjoyment and satisfaction is to watch other people be successful. If you have kids that are a certain age, let's say, I don't know, 35 or whatever, what do you want? You want them to be strong without you. That's what I want.
Shifting gears again, Ray, it's Fed Day, and I wanted to ask you about that. Do you agree with the policies that Janet Yellen has pursued?
By and large, I agree, and in the following sense. They set out a path for tightening interest rates, to raising interest rates and a rate of tightening. And every track that they set out, they didn't adhere to. In other words, they tightened monetary policy much more tightened monetary policy much more slowly than they projected and also the market projected. And that was appropriate, okay? I think that they're questioning their own decisions appropriately. I think that they're making the mistake of thinking that the unemployment rate linkage and inflation linkage is as tight as they believe. And I think that that they need to continue to have a bias toward an easing and not tighten until we get closer to seeing the whites of the eyes of inflation. And that's because of a few reasons. First of all, we don't have an inflation or too hot growth problem, so that's clear. And the breakdown between the link of employment and inflation is connected largely with what we're redefining the workforce as. The workforce, it consists of technology or robot equivalent that are competing with people. So we don't have that same sort of need to tighten monetary policy. Secondly, we have asymmetric risks. We know that tightening will work. If you have a downturn in the economy, and a downturn, most importantly a downturn, and you're starting where you are with almost zero interest rates, and you have to go back to quantitative easing. The tools don't work as effectively. Quantitative easing doesn't work, and there's not much interest rates. So there's an asymmetric risk. In addition, there's a big social risk, because when we think about the economy, it's really that we have two economies. Let's call it two economies. An average doesn't anymore represent it. The top one-tenth of 1% of the population today has a net worth that is equal to the bottom 90% combined. So if you carve out an economy, and we've done the exercise of literally saying, what does the economy for the bottom 60% of the population look like? It's a bad economy. And that bad economy, it hasn't had growth. It has rising death rates from opiates and from suicides and so on. It has a major problem. That has a major problem. And that's causing what I think is our most important economic, social, political issue of our time, which is that dilemma, that clash, those gaps between those people. Imagine if you were to have a downturn now. Okay, what would it be like socially? What will it be like economically? So if you take into consider all of those reasons, I can't see any reason for tightening. I think the issue about how fast the balance sheet rolls off is an important issue. There may not be a rise in rates much or at all, but there's the rolling off of the balance sheet. And those are significant numbers. I don't believe that the Fed is going to be able to have those numbers any more than they would be able to tighten with their interest rates the way they did. So I think a good job. But cautiousness. Also in the markets, that term structure of interest rates is built into all asset classes. If you tighten faster than is discounted in the markets, that's dangerous for the markets too. So we have all those issues. I think they're doing a good job in being cautious.
All right, a lot to chew on there, Ray. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me.